Hi everyone, welcome to the Ultra Dynamics channel. If you've been recently involved in the Dynamics 365 or Power Platform project, you've probably noticed that there are an increasing number of options available when it comes to implementing good ALM and DevOps practices. The right choice may not be that obvious, thus in this video series I will be discussing all the different options that are available for implementing automated builds and deployments for Power Platform so you can choose the right option for your needs. Here is what I'll be covering in today's video. I will start with an overview of key DevOps principles and practices. I will then talk about the different activities and tools that can be used to implement DevOps practices. I will then focus on discussing the different tools available for implementing automated builds and releases for Power Platform and Dynamics 365. Finally, I will provide some guidance on how to pick the best tool for your needs. Before I jump into today's topic, my name is Waad Hamsi and I'm a Business Applications MVP. In this channel, I'd like to share with you some of the things that I have learned and continue to learn, having worked over 20 years on Microsoft Business Applications. Here are some of the channels where I like to share content. You are more than welcome to connect with me. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel if you find this content to be helpful. Let's start with an introduction to DevOps. DevOps is the process and everything that happens between capturing a requirement and delivering it to end users. The goal of DevOps is accelerating and improving quality and consistency. This goal can be achieved by implementing a number of DevOps principles and practices. Let's take a look at some of these principles. Small batch size, which basically means opting for small regular changes instead of big infrequent releases. Shift left. This means performing activities such as proof of concepts, designs, and testing as early as possible. The cost and effort increases the longer it takes to detect issues resulting in delays. Next, collaboration and communication. This means ensuring the required parties such as development operations, business, and vendors are engaged and working towards a shared outcome. Streamlined processes. This is all about minimizing handoffs across teams by creating autonomous teams and having efficient handoffs where required. Automation is basically automating regular repetitive manual tasks to improve consistency and success rate. This often includes automating builds, releases, and testing to implement continuous integration and delivery. Fast feedback. Obtain feedback as early as possible so you can respond quickly. And finally, fast flow. This is all about improving the time it takes from requirement capture and agreement to requirement delivery by using all of the above principles. Now let's talk about the different ALM activities and some of the tools that are available for each. Planning and tracking. This is the first step in application lifecycle management and is typically to define what needs to be delivered. Tools such as Jira or Azure boards can be used to capture requirements, prioritize the backlog, and plan the releases and sprints. This is the input to the rest of the process and needs to be correct to achieve the right output in the end. Next is development. This involves implementing the requirements using low-code, no-code capabilities via the Maker portal and ProDev capabilities in .NET or JavaScript using IDEs such as Visual Studio or VS Code. It is recommended to keep source code and configuration in a version control repository such as Azure repos or GitHub repos. Next is build and release. Build is the process of performing validations on your source code and configuration and then generating packages such as Power Platform solutions. Release is the process of deploying the packages generated by the build into your downstream environments. This often includes execution of different tests until the package is deployed to production. Build and release CI/CD pipelines can be implemented using tools such as Azure Pipelines, GitHub Actions, or even Jenkins. Once your solution is deployed to an environment, next step would be testing. This is the process of executing a number of tests to ensure the solution meets the requirements and highlight any defect and issues with the current solution. Tools such as Azure Test Plans and Jira can be used to manage the testing and the defects. Finally, it's time to take the solution to production. So the operations stage typically involves putting the solution to production and managing the production environments. Tools like ServiceNow can be used to ensure adherence to change management processes when it comes to deployments to production. Once the solution is in production, tools like Azure Monitor can be used to ensure things are running as expected, and Microsoft 365 Health Center can also be used for staying informed about platform updates and incidents. This is not a full list of activities and tools, but this is more to give you an idea of what kind of capabilities and tools you will need to implement an end-to-end DevOps process. Before I start talking about the options for build and release tools, it is worth to pause for a moment and go through some of the main capabilities we expect these tools to have. Let's start with the build process. Once you are done with building your app, the build process typically takes all the source code for your app as input and produces a number of artifacts as outputs. When it comes to Power Apps, your sources will typically include things like your app metadata, some code that you use to extend your app, such as plugin source files written in .NET, or UI customizations or controls written in JavaScript or other languages. It may also include some reference data that your app or process relies on. Next is the build. Once you have all your sources, the time is to build your app. Some of the things the build process is likely to do is generate your solutions, compile your source code, and apply versioning. The build process can also execute static analysis and tests to ensure your application is of the right quality. Finally, the output of the build process is versioned and deployable artifacts with some level of indication about the quality derived through the initial automated checks. Now let's take a look at what is the release process. The release process typically takes artifacts generated by the build process and then deploys these to the target environment. The deployment or release process can consist of several steps. The release may require an approval from the target environment owner. This may be the test manager for a SIT environment or business stakeholders for a production environment. Other steps may include provisioning a dedicated temporary test environment or taking backups of existing configuration. The next step is normally the import of the solution and execution of deployment packages. Once the solutions and packages are deployed to the environment, the last step will typically be executing verification tests and sending comms to the required stakeholders. The goal of the release process is to deploy the packages using a pipeline until the solution is deployed to the production environment and the capability is available to the end users. Now let's discuss some of the typical considerations when choosing ALM tools. These are some generic principles that should guide you towards choosing the right ALM tool regardless of the ALM capabilities you may be considering. First, you may already have some standard ALM tools in your organization that are readily available for you to use, such as Azure DevOps or Jira. Consider using these in the first instance if they meet your requirements. If standard tools don't meet your requirements, there may be an opportunity to challenge standard tools and use something more suitable for your needs. When deciding on tooling, tools with available integrations to Power Platforms such as Azure DevOps or GitHub Actions are more likely to save you setup time and maintenance time, considering using these in the first instance if they meet your needs. Next, having seamless integrations across your ALM tools can help with setup time and traceability. For example, in Azure DevOps, you can manage your backlog and relate commits to your repo with product backlog items. Product backlog items can then be visible in builds and release notes, thus achieving end-to-end traceability. Consider these options if this is something that is important for you. Next, ALM tools may incur additional costs, especially if you don't have an enterprise agreement. Consider these additional costs as part of the overall solution. Next, consider existing skills in your team when deciding on tooling. For example, if your team is highly skilled in Azure DevOps, you could consider this as a key criteria when making a decision on CI/CD tooling. Finally, consider who will be interacting with your tools and what kind of user experience they will get. Is it a citizen dev who requires a simple experience, or is it more pro devs who require a bit more of an advanced experience? By now, hopefully you have a good understanding of DevOps build and release tool capabilities. It is time now to take a look at the build and release tool options stack for Power Platform. At the bottom of the stack, we have the Power Platform itself. So most of the operations that you would need to perform during a build or release process will have platform APIs available. Things like kicking off a solution import or checking the status of a solution import have been available for a very long time. So one of the options would be to utilize these APIs via code such as C# or low code such as Power Automate to automate some of your CI/CD processes and steps. This is likely to require detailed knowledge of the APIs, how the APIs relate to each other, and some skills and effort to implement this. Next, we have automation toolkits. To make automation operations more easily consumable, there are a number of command line tools that provide easy access to most of the operations you would need while automating build and release processes. For example, using Power Platform CLI, you can import a solution with one command line referencing the exported file. This is a lot quicker and still requires development capabilities to create and execute automation scripts. Next, CI/CD tools and extensions are yet another level of abstraction on top of automation toolkits and platform APIs. Using tools like Power Platform Build tools, you can create automated build and release processes using drag and drop capabilities. These processes can be scheduled or executed based on triggers. Using CI/CD tools can speed up your workflow but will require knowledge and effort to set up and maintain. Finally, we have first-class experiences at the top of the stack. This is yet another layer of abstraction on top of the below layers. For example, using the out-of-the-box Power Platform pipelines, you can now set up automated deployment processes using configuration and allow makers to trigger deployments from within the Maker portal. This is likely to provide the best user experience and promises quick and easy setup, at least for the basic scenarios. So what is the best tool? Well, the answer is not simple, and it will depend on many factors such as consumer, the complexity of the solution, team structure, extensibility, skills, and many others. In general, tools in the upper layer are more suitable for consumption by citizen developers, while options at the lower layers are generally more suitable for pro devs. Also, tools in the upper layers will provide quicker time to market, whilst at the same time, tools in the bottom layer will give you more flexibility and functionality. The good news is that all layers are extensible. One option would be to apply the 80-20 rule so that you would pick up the layer that gives you 80% of what you need out of the box and then use the extensibility and potentially the lower layers to give you the missing 20% of the functionality. I'm hoping that by now you have a better understanding of the different options and some of the factors that you need to consider for each option when it comes to automating build and release processes for Power Platform. We just about scratched the surface in today's video. In the next videos, we will take a detailed look at some of the tools in each layer and explore things like pros and cons to make sure that you have all the knowledge required to not only use these tools, but also to make sure that you select the right option for your needs. Thank you for watching. Hit the like button if you found this video useful and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future content. Have a good day.